Okay, we have a presentation on the sign ordinance.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We have Philip De Maria here from Kimley-Horn. And just as a matter of background, what we're doing tonight is before we go to the community and before we go to residents and businesses and the different boards that we have, we want to kind of give you an idea of the approach that we're following in regards to the revisions to the sign code. The revisions that we are looking to do kind of fall into three different categories. We need to make sure that the code is compliant with the latest federal rulings instead of First Amendment issues and everything else, and we'll be doing that part. There are also regulations in which we're going to be addressing the size and the quantity of signage throughout the city in the various districts. But one of the most important pieces of a sign code is the one that we're going to be talking about tonight, which is the aesthetics of the signs. So Kimley-Horn has basically picked up 5 different cities, I believe, right? And we're going to walk you through from where we are today to stringent and stringent codes in terms of aesthetics and in terms of the quality of the signage that we have. So we're going to, this is a process to begin to get some guidance as to where you feel that the city should be at. With this, all of it, this eventually will come back to you in a more formal ordinance and with the feedback from the different areas of the community, with planning, background, everything else. But we felt that you don't have to make decisions tonight, but we wanted you to be aware of the approach that we're following with people. So when people ask you about, what's this survey that the city is doing and what's the purpose of that, you will be able to be educated on the issue. So with that, Philip.
Just if I could clarify one thing you said, just so it's clear for everybody, we have a sign ordinance today, we have standards today, and
Correct.
This is to take it to the next level. It's not we're going to write everything from scratch, because
Yes, yeah, we do have a sign ordinance today. There are some pieces of that sign ordinance that are not in compliance with federal law, and that's one of the pieces that we need to correct, for sure. But it's also an opportunity to improve on the quality of what we have up there.
thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Ray. Once again, just for the record, my name is Philip De Maria. I'm a certified planner with Kimley-Horn, planning and engineering firm. I'm going to run through a brief presentation, if we can get it up on screen, just discussing those points and those aspects that Mr. Ray just mentioned. We'll walk you through the proposed scope of work. The clerk is passing out a proposed survey at this point that we intend to distribute to certain groups over a course of time. I'll dive into that a little bit. But I think the important goal here, right, is realizing that while we've got the patient on the table for open heart surgery, right, we've got to comply with First Amendment issues, we're also going to improve the overall health of the sign code, if you'll allow me to use that analogy. So we can dive right into this. So I'll do a brief review of the scope of the update. We'll review our proposed public outreach efforts and what we'll see over the course of the next few months. We'll dive deep into that peer city sign ordinance evaluation. That's really the opportunity for us to see what sister cities are doing, how they're approaching their signs, and then maybe also provide some guidance for St. Pete Beach and the type of brand that they want to elude when folks enter into the city, travel along its roadways, and are advertised businesses while they're on those roadways. So the first piece is really just looking at scope. So we've done a bit of coordinating with city staff, both Jennifer and Alex. Spent a great deal of time with them, just talking about the issues that they've seen and the experiences that they have had utilizing and administrating code in the city. Public outreach, as we've discussed, we're targeting specific groups as well as the general public to provide some emotional background to what those experiences are and maybe their vision for the future, as well as with you, as well as with the business community. So we're really taking a three-pronged approach there. A true evaluation of the signs when compared to peer cities is very important, just to make sure things are up to snuff. And then eventually, we're going to walk this through a full zoning text amendment process with that guidance. And so amendments will be made to the ordinance. We'll move this through the process that is provided for within the code today. And finally, coming back before you in the form of an adoption hearing. Looking at public outreach, you've got the survey in front of you. The approach that we decided to take was to provide these unnamed cities. So you'll see City A, City B, City C, City D, City E. And we want to really get feedback on what folks feel when they're in these places. Is it of high quality? Does the message get across that there's a business here? Is it a business you want to walk into? Is it a business you drive to? And then also start thinking about what sort of signs you see on the roadways today, whether you're walking, whether you're biking, whether you're driving. All those signs have different typologies because they serve different uses. So this survey really looks for feedback as it relates to what the vision is for St. Pete Beach. We will tailor the solution to the vision by using that public feedback.
Excuse me, I had a question. Okay. I'm not seeing any LED message board signage here, and I don't know, one of the things that we did with our sign ordinance before, and I'm sure you all remember advocating for Paso Grill, that is never allowed to have LED message board signage. In fact, there's a sunset on any signage that's currently there. You know, and that was one of the things that I think was a pretty interesting discussion item as far as with Gulf Boulevard. And when I'm seeing this and we're handing it out to, you know, the public outreach portion, I'm not seeing opinions on how the community feels about LED message board signage and, you know, the distractibility of it while you're driving down Gulf Boulevard and you know,
Commissioner, we can add it, but the approach that we have is going forward, not going backwards.
well, I understand, but when I'm looking forward, are we going to allow that? Are we going to encourage that? It's not in any of the...
And it's not, because we're not encouraging to have that. If you want us to put that as an option, but we didn't feel that we really needed to be asking opinions about something that, you know, that we're probably not going to be doing anyway or recommending.
So we're sunsetting that possibly in the future through this
Correct.
process?
Right.
Okay. Okay, so that was my one concern, because that's something that's always been, you know, a little bit of, so when I'm looking at this, it seems like we would have different types of, you know, whether it's the tombstone or if it's, you know, different styles, like whether it be on the structure itself, depending on what part of the city we're looking at. So when I'm looking at Corey Avenue compared to looking at Gulf Boulevard, compared to, you know, yeah, really, that's kind of my two differentials that I'm looking at is,
Right.
would we be looking at different types of signage regardless of the location, or?
We could. We're looking to consolidate the different sign districts that we have. I think we've got 22.
That's correct.
Right? And we're trying to get that to narrow down to 5 or 6. 22 is very difficult for us to communicate. It's very difficult for us to enforce, because the court officers are going this side of the street, that side of the street, next block. I mean, it's really, really cumbersome. What you have here, and I will ask if we can let Philip really get a bit more into it, because what you really are seeing from these different types is what different cities enforce in terms of materials, what they enforce in terms of the lettering, the construction of the signs, towards having a more aesthetically pleasing signs, and he'll give you some of those criteria as we get into it. So if you allow us,
Okay.
chance to just get into
Yeah,
to that.
absolutely.
Just gone by.
Oh, totally
Yeah, I know.
understood. And your point's well taken. I should take a step back and say that we had 3 overarching goals that Alex directed us with, Alex and Jennifer directed us with when starting this process. One was look for opportunities to improve quality. And quality is a general term, realizing that, and so looking at what other cities are doing. The other one is looking at those zone districts that Alex just mentioned. So currently, the city of St. Pete Beach, every single zone district has its own sign code, which turns into some odd situations where you have, going down Gulf Boulevard, 2 different zone districts on either side of the road that allow different heights with their sign poles, despite the same contextual basis for why a sign should be there. So addressing some of those inconsistencies. And then finally, administration. So looking at opportunities. If someone has a really unique, beautiful sign that would be a potential landmark for their business, let's say, looking at opportunities just to have some flexibility and some latitude in design so that St. Pete Beach still retains that character that it has today. So your point's well taken, and I appreciate it. So as discussed, we reviewed 4 different cities in our review and then compared them to St. Pete Beach. They're on screen right here. We looked at some local examples, Dunedin and Longboat Key. We thought those were provided some context in terms of one being right here in Pinellas County and recently updating its code in Dunedin. Longboat Key having that more of an island vibe, although it is a little bit more residential. But and they also just recently updated their sign code and won an award for the work that they did. Looking at Fort Myers Beach a little bit further down the coast. This was pre-hurricane, so it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting case study to see what happens after the hurricane when they begin to rebuild. We do take some snapshots in time of pre-sign code, post-sign code, so you can see a little bit of it. And then finally, Miami Beach, just looking at the East Coast with its history of development, as well as Miami Beach really being an international tourist destination. What are they doing that could be interesting that we might find applicable to St. Pete Beach? So we'll start with Dunedin. These are very visual in nature. I'll walk you through these. Some of these things will be very obvious. We've got a kind of a streetscape setting that is somewhat reminiscent of maybe Paso Grill or Corey Avenue here. But you can see the distinct difference before 2017 right there in the middle of the screen, and then after in 2022. And a lot of those are the same businesses, right? Salon Suites is one that pops out to us. It has this large rectangular plastic sign in 2017. After an update to the code, as well as seems like a full renovation to the shopping center, you can see how that sign really transforms. And it has higher quality. We think it represents the business a little bit better. It is larger, and that could be controversial in some camps, but realizing that as long as quality is improved, larger doesn't necessarily mean a negative thing.
And what's the top section?
That's just on their main street.
That's current.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that bottom one looks like they renovated the whole building
Yeah.
in the process. So, which brings up a question. Speaking of Fort Myers Beach, I assume that they had some of their signage, I don't know how much, what percentage, but some of it had been grandfathered in and they've changed the code since then. Now that they've cleaned everything out, it looks like they'll go back to, I'm assuming a lot of those signs end up changing to conform with the new code. Is that your understanding?
That's the expectation.
Okay.
Typically, only upon the application of a permit would sign permits really be addressed. So that would be the administration aspect. You wouldn't be able to knock someone with a code enforcement violation for something that they had permitted previously, right?
Right.
But there's also a business economic incentive in this kind of approach, because if you look at Salon Suites, if you look at the pre-2017, you can barely read what the business is there, right?
Right.
The lower one, yes, it is more aesthetically pleasing, but it also transmits more information as to who the tenant of that location is. So they'll have an incentive to say, this really puts my name in a better light. So, so just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is much more attractive after it's been redone, so.
We hoped you'd say that.
Continue. That incentives is maybe one of the things we look at too. You look at a strip like that, and that's a lot like Corey, for instance, or 8th Avenue. Maybe we offer some incentives at a later date for, modernizing the buildings a little bit and putting up some signage that looks like this.
One other thing that I'll call out, it's in the text and not in the graphics here, but it's the sandwich board piece, and Alex and Jennifer and our team discussed this about how on Gulf Boulevard today there's sometimes a proliferation of sandwich board signs that maybe say things that aren't sandwiches, So recognizing, at least in Dunedin, they require sandwich board signs to be composed of a chalkboard material, maybe be written using chalk, so it is a true sandwich sign and not just an A-frame that provides additional signage.
Those
And then
plastic signage.
Yeah, you'll see one in the top photograph on the left side of the photo. It's a little-
Oh, yeah, I see that. Well, I believe we don't allow them here unless they were taken in every night, I think is the,
Yeah, but people can put them in every day.
yeah.
And then you drive down the boulevard and there's all kinds of, he calls them sandwich boards, I call it A-frames, but there is a proliferation of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this next jurisdiction is Longboat Key. This was also updated in 2018, similar to Dunedin. They have a very simple sign code in that they only allow 4 types of signs, primary signs, and that they require that signs are constructed of the same materials, colors, and styles of the buildings on site, which we think is a best practice when it comes to signs. It allows there to be, a relationship between the sign and the building. An interesting thing that they do before I move to the photos is they limit the amount of signage based on the linear feet of frontage. So if you have a long parcel with a lot of frontage right on Gulf Boulevard, you'd be provided additional sign space, up to a cap, but additional sign space to correlate with the amount of frontage that you have. And we think that could also be something that would be applicable to St. Pete Beach, because in certain parts on these commercial strips, they're very narrow parcels and they're allowed, each individual one can have a pole sign, and then you have pole sign after pole sign after pole sign. And it creates a sort of sign pollution, if you will.
So would there be up to a maximum
Yes, ma'am.
regardless? So it's a minimum and then a maximum
Correct.
based on the scaling it to the width of the property?
Correct. Longboat Key puts you in tranches based on how much linear footage you have. So I believe they have 3 tranches. If you're up to 100 feet, you get this. If you're between 100 and 500, you get this. And then 500 to 1,000, you get this. And those are all maximums.
And you can see that they're very restrictive on height. It's probably the smallest public sign you'll ever see. Even the gas station sign is it's fairly small, given what normally you'll see at gas stations. So
Well, Longboat's a lot more residential than we are.
yes, correct.
So, there's what they call monument signs, I guess, and, much like the Bay Isle sign that you see at the top of that picture.
You're absolutely right. They do have a Publix on the island, and they've concentrated a lot of their commercial space into this Publix anchored plaza. And now they're trying to build a town center around it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, probably 90% of the island is residential. We went even further down that rabbit hole with Fort Myers Beach, which is, I think, close to 95% residential. And as we discussed, a lot of this is going to be a case study over the course of the next few years as they rebuild. But Alex talked about sign height. Fort Myers Beach has the most restrictive maximum sign height on their island. It's a maximum of 5 feet. So think about no pole signs. And you can see, I don't know how many 7-Elevens or gas stations that you've seen, but right there in the middle of the picture, you can see how that pole sign was replaced. And now it's, a 4-foot tall 7-Eleven sign that just has one gas price on it. We felt like, in our discussions, if I could critique theirs, is maybe it goes a little bit too far, right? If you look at the monument sign in the middle right, each of those businesses, despite it being a large plaza, each of those business advertisements are so small, it provides limited benefit to their each individual business. Any questions on this? We'll keep moving. And then pulling back to a place that sees a lot more commercial business, right? The balance is maybe closer to 50-50 than 90-10 of residential to commercial land uses is Miami Beach. This was enacted in 2016. They have only 3 primary sign types: detached signs, wall-mounted signs, and projecting signs. So this is interesting because they have a limit. They don't necessarily have that tombstone sign or that what we call monument sign.
Monument signs.
Exactly.
What does the detached sign refer to then?
So they allow a small sign to be detached from their building. And it's really almost like a back of house or an entryway sign or something like that, but it's not a full monument sign that you would see in another area with allowable of 20 square feet or something along those lines.
Do you have an example of one of those detached?
Is that the Publix one?
Yeah, the
Publix one down at the bottom?
Lower left?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
What about,
Listen to me, the public's.
Yeah, I thought that was one. I wanted him to confirm that.
I like the old one better.
Yeah, I think it's obviously, it's a lot of building signage just compared to.
what's the projecting sign?
So a projecting sign will push itself. It's more of a pedestrian-oriented sign, but it pushes itself over the sidewalk in a way. So you probably see them, I think in the Dunedin
Park.
example, I probably had the best example, but a sign that projects into the roadway or
Yeah.
projects into a sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
That's nice. I mean, it really cleans things up.
Yeah, it does.
And it does require the aluminum sign individual letters, which, for example, PCI has that in here.
Yeah.
And, it's probably the best part of their building is the sign, but it does create that higher end look. It is more expensive for the businesses to do these individual aluminum letters. But it does bring up, and you see the requirement in the lower right-hand photo of those businesses are all required to have kind of the similar type
Yeah.
of signage and everything else. So,
Yeah.
you still can see the differences between them, but it's a standardized approach and standardized look to it.
So no murals with signage.
Well, that's one thing that we've talked about, right? About the ability to have some latitude for certain things.
Or not,
Mural. Yeah, or
in
not.
that situation.
But yeah, that's an interesting piece of this too. But I think just reinforcing what Alex said, this is obviously the cleanest brand when it comes to signage of all the examples that we looked at. They put some real good thought into what they were trying to standardize when it comes to all of their businesses. Whether you're a FedEx or a local business, you're required to follow these design standards: cut aluminum, separated letters, no plastic, and it provides a real sense of place.
Did they sunset all of the old signs when they changed in 2018?
I don't think so. I think we were intentional about finding photos that showed before and afters or good examples of new signage. And if you'd like, in another presentation, or we could send some materials to you of maybe what their previous sign code looked like.
Yeah, and once we go through this and we decide what level we like, then we'll have to have discussions of, how much time you're going to give for sunsetting of signage, requirements for upgrading signage when businesses are done, and all of those discussions will happen. But we first need to figure out how far we're going to push the aesthetics on this, and like I said at the beginning, we'll get input from the businesses, from the residents, and and we'll be accumulating that. Also, a survey on the website, and see what people really like in terms of.
I like the idea of including aesthetics as part of it. I think in the past, it was always concentrated on making the signage a little bit smaller and lower. And yet there were some unintended consequences, like you've heard me bring this up before, the Shell gas station on 46th and Gulf Boulevard. They brought it down, but it just looks too big and too out of scale for that area. And at nighttime, it's really bright. So, that's one that sticks out. Now, if you want to use that one as a not so good example, but I think we also want to make it clear that, this is going to have to be, a public process where we get in, plenty of input, not only from residents, but businesses. I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce will be involved in this. So, the idea is not to hurt businesses, but to make it a better solution for everybody. Arguably, raises the brand of St. Pete Beach, makes it better for everybody. And then we can kind of talk about how much time you allow a business to kind of amortize, because they may have just put a new sign in, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years ago. So how do you allow a reasonable period of time for them to make it, brought up to current code?
Well, and one of the things too, I don't know if this is part of your presentation, I need to be quiet. We have that primary sign that's at the street or on the building. It seems to me that we have so many where we have the Gulf Boulevard sign for the Shell station, but then their entire building is one great big sign. So secondary signage or
Yeah.
whatever, seems to be,
Right.
aesthetically a really unattractive situation.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking into, is number of signs. We've found several examples of businesses that have, they see the menu of signs and they choose every single one like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Yeah.
As long as on the inside of the window,
Right.
nobody's going to say anything, even if there's neon lights going all the way around.
That's one of the biggest loopholes that we have in our sign code.
Right.
It's like, somehow they felt that the window was an open season for signage, right? So, but it still is a sign.
They have all the coolers on the outside with all the
Right.
advertising on
Right,
them.
Because they bring all their merchandise outside, and it
Right.
effectively
So
comes a
I'm
lot more
really looking
signage.
forward to this, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, just a comment, I think it's important, it's a good project, we need to do it, we've been talking about this, I've been off the planning board for several years now, and we had discussion even before I was on the planning board. 22 zones, obviously, how we got there, it's interesting, but we need to simplify it. But I think it's important, the aesthetics, and also that we first figure out what do we want this to represent, and how will it represent St. Pete Beach, right? You get a feel, you go to certain places, we've all traveled, you go, oh, okay, I know I'm here, because the signage kind of gives you a feeling. And personally, I don't like the Miami look. I don't like the 2018. I prefer the 15. That's just my personal opinion. But because it sterilizes everything. And I don't think we want a sterile St. Pete Beach. How do we, maybe it's by zone. It's difficult within zone. We want to have the character of each of the zones. And so that comes forward. At the same time, have some overarching, and I'm not a good artist here, but some overarching
Like a theme.
that says and represents St. Pete Beach. So wherever you are in St. Pete Beach and you see a sign, you go, yeah, St. Pete Beach. And is it color? Is it font? Is it size? To me, it's not that Miami one. I love the Publix one from 2015. I think that's cool.
Well, it's cool, but, again, when you leave it to everyone's interpretation, that's why, people like HOAs, because nobody's going to paint their house purple. And so when you leave it to, if it's not defined in a more, just some level of those character elements that you were talking about, then it opens up the door too wide to what can be there, and then all of us have to drive by it every single
And then we
day.
have 22 zones.
And so, as much as I think that is a sterile, like, as far as like, if you go over, I think a classic example is a Hyde Park Village is so pretty because they have all the signs going out, or the areas where the signs are that way, like the ones that are actually on the structure itself rather than off the street, because to me, that's so visually distracting. Most of us have phones, when we're going someplace, you can know where we're going. We don't need the sign next to the road, telling us, this is where Publix is. But anyway, so I'm glad there's some consistency, but I also think that if you open the door too wide, you end up with some very unattractive murals and signage.
And this is a great discussion, right? Because we're here, kind of in the free-for-all in aesthetics, and we're giving you different layers as to how strict you can get and what kind of look you can get. And we're going to get that from the community and the public as well. And we may end up here, or here, but it's it's a great discussion to be had in terms of what's the right look. Because each city is different, and you can see, 4 cities that went through the same process, right, and arrived at different results. And they all felt that what they were doing was the right thing for their city. There's no right or wrong. No, there simply is which is the one that you think it fits better, and and we can work from that. So.
Okay,
Very well said. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
So we went through 4 peer cities here, and really the last slide is looking at St. Pete Beach. We don't have to spend too much time on it. I think everyone's familiar. But just looking at some of these photos, obviously it's a little bit different. And granted, some of these have to do with land uses, and we're working through a separate process to maybe look at some of that. But realizing that the inconsistency that's been brought up is certainly something that we're trying to address here, along with the quality, along with the administration. That's our 3-pronged approach to solving what has been identified as an issue.
I like that sign in the middle on the right-hand side.
Yeah, that one looks good, doesn't it?
Well, I think a lot of it too is if we just stay on that right-hand side, and it seems an odd thing to point out. Part of it's definitely the sign, but even just landscaping around it
absolutely. Everything about it, really.
makes a big difference.
Yeah.
That's one of
and
Ray
that's-
Gallant's, I think.
Yeah, and that's
I
one of
think
the
Ray did that one,
requirements of Longboat Key that requires landscaping around
Yeah.
their signs.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's details like
Yeah.
that, but overall, it just improve quality. So as we said, we're really at the very beginning of this process. We're looking for input, just like you've given us today. This is extremely helpful. We'll continue having these conversations with other folks in the community as well. And we look forward to presenting to you a quality product that we can all be proud of. I think just generally speaking, we put some dates on the board here. The St. Pete Beach, or the Gulf Beach Chamber of Commerce, their next meeting is November 1st. So maybe getting the survey in front of them at that point would be appropriate, and then doing a general public survey prior to the holidays and folks getting too busy. So maybe or immediately after November 1st, looking at a general public survey. And then eventually being back before you here in early 2023 with some recommendations.
How are you distributing the visual preference survey? Is that getting sent out to?
We've discussed several approaches. Our intention with that is that it's immediately backwards compatible with like a SurveyMonkey, an online survey.
Okay.
But obviously, some folks would not be residents that could be responding to those. So it's really a choice of what sort of feedback we want to get from who.
Should we be adding a town hall meeting or resident meeting to this list? Because I don't, We're going to
We-
send
we-
surveys.
Yeah, we can. We're going to see how many, how much feedback we get through the online survey and everything else. And, but yeah, that can probably be a commission workshop where residents can also come and opine and all that. So it's,
We should have the same approach to all the, however we segment the population, we should just have the same approach. Let people come in, give their opinions, have discussions. Sending in a survey isn't that.
yeah, that's fine. That's what we're here for, to get your feedback. So we can add that.
Everybody in agreement with that approach?
Yeah, I was,
Understanding.
yeah, you're thinking about before the planning board.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that's a public meeting, then we're going to have public meetings, but yeah, I'm open to, this is a big issue. And we really haven't,
Lips.
And
You
I'm,
know that?
so I'm open for that, I mean.
No, my suggestion, Commissioner Pletcher, was that we have some separate meeting with residents
Right.
to allow them to come in and give their opinion, same as business owners. Should we have a town hall meeting, or if people show up, it's great. If they don't, we had our
Just a
opportunity.
workshop.
Or-
With the
I
public.
think that'd
Yeah.
be so great.
Yeah, just a workshop. And I'm not sure it should be limited to anybody. I mean, I don't know who's going to attend the chamber meeting. My concern is, I don't know if businesses that are not chamber members don't feel comfortable going to those meetings. So we'd have a workshop for anybody, whether it's a resident, business, anybody that wants to come out.
Well, and I think the key to that is it's so hard for business owners, they're small business owners, to take off to go to a meeting. So the online Survey Monkey is fine. I just don't know if it's as thoughty, because it's real easy to visually just boom, boom, boom. Where's the truck in the picture? Or, type thing, but I think that it would be really great. It's just a matter of tweaking out a time, whether not maybe we'd have one in the morning and then,
Yeah,
or
something.
something, and one in the evening. Just they have the two different types of businesses. Because I think their input is really important. I think residents, obviously, they would have a huge importance in aesthetics as well, because they have to drive by this ugly stuff all the time, and they have opinions. But I think the business owners, what they can live with, I mean, it seems like they've always wanted more. And, with the LED message board signage, and it looks like a freaking circus when you drive down the street. We teeter on that very, very closely, we have to watch it. But, now with all the, it's so trendy to do the murals and painting all kinds of stuff that, I don't know. It seems like that signage too, is reinforcing their brand, of their business. So, yeah. It's good. I like the workshop idea, Mark.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, let's do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.